What's poppin', everyone? VenomousStare back with another StarCraft 2 replay. This time we have an exceptionally old game I played, a fun custom match with my buddy ARamp, aka Rampy, who's been featured on this channel in a multitude of different series. And this is actually a custom game we played back in 2017, and I was flipping through my replays and I accidentally clicked the scroll bar all the way to the bottom, and it went way back to 2017. And I was clicking through my replays and I saw this one was basically about to expire, so I thought I would cast it. One of the things that I regret with this channel is not casting more of these little for fun games I would play with my friends, because I would always think to myself like, well, these are a little bit low level, or maybe this skill is not exactly even when it comes to my friends and I. Maybe the friend I'm playing against doesn't play as much as me. It's always weird. I've done this thing with my channel throughout the years, whether it be with the StarCraft videos or the Call of Duty videos, where I almost like get shy with which games I want to show off. I only want to show off the best of the best, which is sort of silly because, you know, on some level it's my channel, and if I want to cast goofy friend games, then I should cast goofy friend games. But I don't really play that many games with my friends anymore. A lot of them don't really play StarCraft very much at all anymore. I think this game, not only is it the best game ever made, but it's the game that I care about the most. It's the game that I relate to the most as someone who doesn't like to be drugged down by the lowest common denominator of a team game, as someone who is very competitive and likes to sort of be in control of everything. Even when I play a team game, I'm always very frequently giving call outs and trying to communicate well and make sure everyone's on the same page. And I remember the first time I started playing StarCraft back in high school in early 2012. One of the things that drew me to this game was how much of it relied on you, and how if you screwed up, you had to sort of watch the replay and figure out what you did wrong and try to hold yourself accountable and get better. As we see a pylon block from Savagewood up here in the top left, that's me. I've already taken an expansion. This is Jungle Basin. This is not a good map for Zerg at all. The most famous match ever played on this map was Greg Idrefield's very last game in his GSL round of 8 run. He was playing against the Swedish macro Terran. Speaking of macro, look how bad mine is. He was playing against the Swedish macro Terran Liquid Jinro, and Idra won an exciting first game on Zelnaga Caverns, lost to a double bunker rush on a close position Metalopolis game, lost on close positions Old Shakuris Plateau with the backdoor rocks, where the Terran would kill their own rocks and siege your main from this weird little like back path. Back in those days, Blizzards had an obsession with putting these weird back rocks on maps. They would make these small congested rush maps like Blistering Sands, and then they would be like, well, there's a backdoor rocks. This map has a similar thing. There's a backdoor rocks at the natural. And I think Blizzard was sort of saying like, well, if there's a backdoor rocks, it'll help Zerg, because we put Zerg in these tiny maps that are awful for Zerg and really have difficult third bases. Like this map, the third base is basically right in the middle or way off on the side, virtually impossible to take for Zerg. But we have a backdoor rocks, so you know Zerg can like get lings in. Well, what actually happened is all Terran and Protoss had to do was park a unit behind the rocks and they would be fine, and in many cases the rocks were just used to abuse Zerg in the mid game. Of course, Shakuris Plateau did get changed to have that backdoor rock feature removed because it was imbalanced. But to conclude the thought on Idra vs Jinro, this map perfectly suited Jinro's macro, safe, defensive play style, and that is what Idra said. That's not my opinion. So what Idra, the notorious macro, I'm going to play the long game, play straight up player did was, even though he was down 2-1 and his GSL tournament life was on the line, he went 6 pool, which if you just started playing the game, 6 pool is essentially like what 12 pool is now. You don't make a drone, you just straight up make your pool and do a Zergling rush. He pulled his drones, and Liquid Jinro, who was down here in the bottom right, had a Marine escape into his bunker with 5 HP. If Idra had killed that last Marine, he would have gone on to a 5th game, and he would have been in a really good position to win the series. Now, the reason that I tell this long-winded anecdote as you see Rampy here start to work on the rocks is these games were actually lost. This was a great example of why I do the Venomous Classic series, is to catalog these old great games, because the Venomous Classic series is where I take a look back at old classic programs, not like these silly custom games I used to play with friends. But in the Venomous Classic series, I take a look back at a lot of these old phenomenal games that I notice when people like Spineless Husky StarCraft delete their channel without warning, 1,000+ valuable VODs gone. And these websites like IPL or NASL, once the StarCraft 2 portion of their website goes under, or they don't do tournaments anymore, they all of a sudden stop paying for the file hosting on their website, even though it's a YouTube link. They're not truly hosting the files, but the links go dead, the VODs are gone forever. And as someone who actually plays this game and cares about it a great deal, unlike the majority of people on Reddit that just balance wine and don't actually play the game or know anything about it or care about the history of the game, I want to catalog those things. I don't want them to be lost, and I don't want valuable games in StarCraft 2 history to be forgotten like Idra's deepest GSL run was. GOM TV, I've gone to their channel and explicitly asked for them to add the GSL January 2011 VODs, and they just haven't done it as far as the round of 8 goes. They might have the final up or something, but not only do they not properly catalog the VODs, but truthfully they don't actually title them or construct or organize them in any way that makes them findable. I remember one time the best esports journalist in the world, Duncan Thorin Shields, was writing a piece on the Korean Zerg Lenok, and there was a disconnect here and we resumed the VOD. Lenok was a guy who made a few deep tournament runs and had one of the most entertaining GSL finals ever versus MMA. Well, you know what happened is Duncan wanted to write a story about him and he just couldn't find the VODs because the GSL basically didn't put any of the player names in the title. Remember, GOM TV is the old company that used to do GSL. It's now under Afrika and they do a better job organizing the VODs, but you sort of have to be really, really into the game to want to go back and watch old VODs, but that's sort of how I am about this game. I care about it on a level that goes further than just, oh, it's like a game that I play or it's a hobby. Because I've met a lot of the pro gamers, friends with a lot of them, I'm on good terms with a lot of them. I really care about them, and I want the history of this game to be properly cataloged. And Jungle Basin being such a cramped, small map, the third base is very easy to aggress upon and destroy. Just exceptionally easy. I mean, it's right smack dab in the middle of the map. You really have to be holding both these towers. On such a narrow, chodish map, holding both these towers is very important. And after killing ARamp's third, Savagewood is going to take a third of his own. And you can see here that Savagewood went for a gateway and robo opener, focusing heavily on immortals. He's getting +2 armor. This is a safe macro build, something you would do on a map like this where you sort of want to play safe and standard and value the beefiness of your army as opposed to going for a fancy tech opening. I just finished watching BlizzCon, 2019 BlizzCon where Dark won. I plan on casting a lot of those replays, but you know, guys, a lot of times when I say, oh, I want to cast these replays or I'm going to cast these replays, what happens is I download the replay pack and I cast about 4 or 5 of the games and I upload them, oftentimes staggering the uploads so you guys can get a new video every day for a week. And then Blizzard updates the game 2 days after the tournament ends, and it becomes a huge pain in the ass to cast the VODs because I have to re-log in every time and go back and find the replay that I was on and all that nonsense. But more importantly than just the pain in the ass factor of actually viewing the replay is they do huge patches right after events and a lot of the replay tactics become obsolete. Speaking of obsolete, there were no shield batteries back in this time. Protoss relied on the mothership core, and a recall is going to occur here for Savagewood. And after losing a handful of probes, and by handful I mean about a whole mineral line, Savagewood does recall and sort of defend his natural. The tricky thing about mutas is once Zerg gets about 14, one cannon won't cut it. Stalkers really aren't all that good unless you have quite a few, so Zerg can start to really poke and prod, hit your pylons, be annoying. This is not what you want to do with your mutas. Even if you're macroing and sort of focusing on your bases, whenever you commit heavily to mutas especially, you always have to be harassing with them. Now that's not to say like, oh, it has to be the mineral line every time, although that is sort of like the most rewarding spot, is to just fly in with mutas and kill a bunch of workers. I remember back when I very first started playing StarCraft, my go-to strategy, like most noobs, was like the 6 pool, and I did that for like a week. I was like, okay, like this is just sort of corny and it's like a coin flip. So then my go-to strategy was 2-hatch muta, and it was like basically my master plan to rush out mutas and go straight to the mineral line and try to deal game-ending damage. It's very funny whenever you look back at the strategies that you choose to do initially in a strategy game when you really don't have any idea how to play. And this is the problem with going for mutas on a very short, choke pointy map like this, is the other guy's just going to A-move the shit out of you and counterattack. With this much army, you can have a lot of stuff up here and it's still going to be very difficult to hold. Whenever you go for base trades like this, it's better on big maps, it's better on these sort of maps where you can dart in with the mutas and do significant damage over time and whatnot, but these maps that are very narrow and favor straight up fights with not a lot of room for flanking definitely are bad for Zerg. And ARamp is going to try to bring the mutas back here, as once you morph in a couple Archons, the Zerg is not going to be able to base trade with you with mutas. And ARamp is going to lose a few more mutas here, flying into these exceptionally powerful photon overcharged pylons. Now looking back at this game, I do like the fact that the mothership core was removed and shield batteries were added. The one thing that I don't really like about shield batteries is when they're used offensively in a cannon rush. I think the cannon rush with the proxy robo immortal is sort of corny, especially with a warp prism and the extended pickup range, but let's just rewind it a bit here if I'm going to keep talking. I'm not really a fan of that, but in terms of defensive play and how they function within the game, I think it's way better than the mothership core.
Is under attack.
I think that in general, having like this goofy hero unit that you have to build one of and it's limited to one just wasn't really a good design for the game. And having something else for Protoss to be defensive with other than cannons is good for the game too, because it's sort of newbie and not really how you're supposed to play to, okay, I need to take my third, I need to make like 5 or 6 cannons. You know, like we see Protoss players take their third now and they make a shield battery or two. One of the main ways that a Protoss will go out to take a third is they'll make the Nexus, make a pylon and a battery, and they can hide a couple of depths in the choke, and that can hold off an insane amount. So I like the battery. I also like how the battery works versus Terran and Protoss in terms of putting it in your mineral line and helping it negate things like oracles or medevac drop harass, stuff like that. Anytime your opponent is down an upgrade, carapace wise, relative to your attack, and you have immortals, things can get very messy very quickly. And we can see here the shift A move was a little sloppy. But yeah, this replay was about to expire, and it might not be anything special, but I do like to sort of catalog these old school games I played with my friends. And this is Jungle Basin. It's a 2011 tier map, but this is obviously not Wings of Liberty. I like to play on the throwback maps with my friends. You can sit there and play the ladder all day long, but to be able to play Lost Temple and Metalopolis and stuff, I think is sort of fun and nostalgic. So hopefully I'll be back with BlizzCon replays. The fact of the matter is they'll probably release that big ass new patch in like 2 days and the replay pack will be all effed up. Frankly, the replay pack should have been released within like an hour of BlizzCon ending, because if you look at things like the Day 9 Daily, that was something that really helped build the scene. It really helped people learn. Sure, you can watch a tournament and see the games and sort of see what people are doing, right? But that's completely different than doing like an hour-long in-depth VOD review of something and really going balls deep into a replay and trying to learn from it. As Artosis once said, and remember, anything Artosis says is law, there's a difference between watching a game of StarCraft with a pizza and a beer and watching a game of StarCraft with a notepad and trying to learn. And I think whenever an entire replay pack gets invalidated 3 days after it's released, it's not good for the scene. Because this isn't 2012 where there's a big tournament every weekend. You know, there's a Red Bull event one weekend, and then the very next weekend a DreamHack, and then an IM, and then an MLG, where it's literally like every single weekend there's at least something entertaining to watch. Those days are past us. Really, there's maybe 4 events that are truly big and you can count on a lot of people going to. And a lot of times, the replays aren't even released adequately or well structured. Yeah, okay. A lot of times the replays do get out, but in terms of, okay, here are the replays, they're publicized, they're organized. You know how many times I want to cast games for this channel and I click on the replay and nothing is organized? It's just a massive fuckfest of replays, and it doesn't even tell you what order they're in. So I have to like go to Wikipedia and try to figure it out, but the map order isn't always on there. So then I have to hunt down the already casted VOD to see what order the games are in. I mean, that is really discouraging and irritating. So hopefully we'll have some BlizzCon replays soon, but as it stands, this was a fun little game between a buddy and I.